I thought I had it all. Dream job designing futuristic cities, beautiful wife, powerful father-in-law backing my career. Until that board meeting when my presentation was sabotaged. Then I found my wife's text to another man. Then I discovered buried documents revealing why my father-in-law really hired me. Now they've taken everything from me, my job, my home, my reputation. But they made one fatal mistake. They left me with nothing to lose and secrets that could destroy them all. My name is Otis Cruz. I'm 37 years old. And until recently, I was the lead sustainable urban systems developer at Green Vista Innovations, one of America's fastest-growing eco-development firms. I designed systems that transformed concrete jungles into breathable, livable spaces, green rooftops that reduced energy costs, water reclamation systems that saved millions of gallons annually, urban forests that improved mental health while sequestering carbon. I didn't just plan cities, I healed them. I was already making waves in the industry when Raymond Williams, Green Vista's founder and CEO, approached me after I won the National Urban Innovation Award. Your vertical garden system could revolutionize how we approach urban density problems, he said, examining my designs with calculating eyes. I've been looking for someone with your vision. My team needs fresh blood. The offer he made was too good to pass up. Creative freedom, resources beyond what I had ever worked with, and a salary that made my previous one look like pocket change. What I didn't know then was that Raymond had approached me for reasons beyond my professional capabilities. He had noticed something in my work, a connection to an old rival of his that even I wasn't aware of. 6 months into my new position, I met Paige at a company sustainability gala. She wasn't just breathtaking in her emerald dress. She was passionate, articulate, and knew more about urban microclimate management than most of my colleagues. When she mentioned she was working on her doctorate in environmental psychology, I was hooked. My father believes the future of cities is in practical engineering, she said, sipping her champagne. But I've always argued that we have to understand human behavior first. What good is a perfect system if people won't adapt to it? I nearly choked when she introduced herself as Paige Williams, Raymond's daughter. The look on his face when he saw us talking was unreadable, but in retrospect, I should have paid more attention to the calculating gleam in his eyes. Our relationship progressed quickly. Too quickly, perhaps, but when you meet someone who seems to understand your passions, who challenges your thinking and supports your ambitions, you don't question the good fortune. Within 8 months, I was proposing. Within a year, we were married in an elaborate ceremony that featured sustainable everything, from the reclaimed wood altar to the farm-to-table menu. What I didn't know then was that Raymond had orchestrated much of it, not out of fatherly love, but as part of a long game I was only beginning to understand. The handshake he gave me at the reception was firm, his smile perfect, but his words carried a weight I should have recognized. "Welcome to the family, Otis," Raymond said, clapping my shoulder. "I trust you'll be as loyal to my daughter as you are to my company." It wasn't a blessing. It was a warning. And I, blinded by love and ambition, completely missed it. The wedding was a masterclass in ecological innovation and high society networking. Green tech CEOs mingled with environmental ministers while admiring the living walls and solar-powered lighting. Raymond had insisted on inviting over 300 guests, most of whom I'd never met. "These are important connections," Paige explained when I questioned the guest list. "Dad says they'll be valuable for both of us in the long run." I should have questioned why my wedding needed to double as a business opportunity, but I was too caught up in the moment, and frankly, in Paige. She was radiant that day, her joy seemingly genuine. When we danced, she whispered plans for our future that aligned perfectly with my own dreams. "We'll change how cities breathe," she said, her eyes bright with passion, or what I thought was passion. "Together, we'll make Dad's company the leader in urban transformation." The honeymoon in Costa Rica was perfect, hiking through cloud forests, staying in eco-lodges, planning sustainable community models together over breakfast. For those 2 weeks, I felt like the luckiest man alive. The shift came gradually after our return. I first noticed it during a dinner at Raymond's mansion. While Paige chatted animatedly with her father about company prospects, I felt oddly sidelined. When I offered input on a project, Raymond's response was polite but dismissive. "That's an interesting perspective, Otis," he said with a tight smile. "Perhaps a bit too experimental for our current direction." "Paige, who had always championed my innovative approaches, merely nodded in agreement with her father. The look they exchanged was brief, but loaded with something I couldn't quite identify. At work, the changes became more pronounced. Projects I had been leading were suddenly reassigned. My team was gradually reduced, with key members transferred to other departments. When I brought this up to my supervisor, his explanation was vague. "Raymond wants to diversify your expertise," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Spread your influence across different aspects of the company." It sounded reasonable, but the result was a systematic reduction of my authority. Meanwhile, Jared Vance, Raymond's newest executive hire, seemed to be absorbing my responsibilities. A Harvard MBA with an easy smile and political connections, Jared was everything I wasn't: polished, conventionally corporate, and from the same social echelon as the Williams family. "Jared's father and I go way back," Raymond announced during a strategy meeting. "He understands our vision intuitively." At home, Paige began attending more social events without me. "Just boring fundraisers," she'd say, kissing me quickly before leaving an evening where that seemed increasingly elegant and expensive. "You'd be miserable there." One night, I found her in our home office, hastily closing her laptop when I entered. "Working late?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Just some research for my dissertation," she replied, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. "How was your day? Did Dad approve your river corridor proposal?" "He moved the presentation to next week," I said. "Third postponement this month." Paige squeezed my shoulder sympathetically, but something felt rehearsed about the gesture. "He's just busy with the Beijing expansion," she said. "Don't take it personally." But it was becoming increasingly difficult not to take it personally when every day brought new evidence that something in my perfectly designed life was starting to crack. The quarterly board meeting should have been my moment to shine. After working 80-hour weeks for months, my team had developed a revolutionary urban cooling system that could reduce city temperatures by 3 degrees while cutting energy costs by 40%. The data was solid, the implementation plan flawless, and even the most conservative projections showed a return on investment within 18 months. "And now, Otis Cruz will present the Nature Cool initiative," Raymond announced with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The board members straightened in their chairs, attentive and expectant. I stood confidently, remote in hand, but when I clicked to open my presentation, different slides appeared, an older, far less impressive version of the project with incomplete data and preliminary sketches instead of our finalized models. "There seems to be a mistake," I said, maintaining my composure despite the sudden tension in the room. Raymond sighed dramatically. "This is disappointing, Otis. The board was expecting the finalized model we discussed last week." "This isn't my presentation," I insisted, looking around the room. Jared was studying his notes, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "I uploaded the complete version yesterday. Perhaps you're confusing this project with another," Raymond suggested, his tone dripping with false concern. Several board members exchanged glances. Later, in Raymond's office, he didn't even pretend to believe me. The mask had slipped, revealing the calculating businessman beneath the father-in-law facade. "The board members were concerned about your preparation," Raymond said, leaning back in his leather chair. "Perhaps you're spreading yourself too thin. First the Miller project delays, now this." "We both know what happened to that presentation," I responded evenly, refusing to be intimidated. That evening, I checked the server logs and discovered someone had accessed my files at 2 a.m. from Jared's account. They had systematically replaced my final presentation with an early draft and deleted the backup from the company server. I confronted him the next day in the parking garage. "I know what you did," I said, blocking his path to his Tesla. The morning sun glinted off the vehicle's polished surface as we stood between luxury cars that suddenly seemed like symbols of a game I was just beginning to understand. Jared didn't even deny it. "Raymond wanted to see if you'd crack under pressure," he replied, straightening his Italian silk tie. "Consider it a test, one that you're failing spectacularly." Rather than losing my temper, I chose strategy over emotion. "I've backed up everything," I told him, my voice steady. "Next time you try to sabotage me, I'll have proof that will go straight to the board." His smug expression flickered for just a moment. I was done being the nice guy. That night, I installed hidden cameras in my office and encrypted my work with sophisticated security protocols from my college roommate's cybersecurity firm. I set up independent cloud storage that only I could access, and created a detailed log of every suspicious incident over the past 6 months. I didn't tell Paige. Increasingly, I felt I couldn't trust her either. When my river reclamation project mysteriously disappeared from the company's servers a week later, I was ready. I had the backups and footage of Jared enter my office after hours. Instead of immediately exposing him, I waited for the strategic moment. Something was happening to my wife, and it wasn't subtle. Paige, who once preferred hiking boots and field research, now spent hours choosing outfits for galas I wasn't invited to. Her doctoral research on psychological responses to green urban spaces, once her passion, was rarely mentioned anymore. "You seem different lately," I said one morning as she applied makeup for a brunch meeting with her father. The woman in the mirror barely resembled the passionate environmental psychologist I'd fallen in love with. Paige glanced at me in the mirror, her eyes cooler than they used to be. "I'm evolving, Otis. That's what people do. We can't all stay fixated on the same ideas forever." But this wasn't evolution. It was a transformation orchestrated by Raymond. My wife was becoming a perfectly polished corporate ambassador, complete with newly conservative opinions that echoed her father's. The change had been gradual enough that I'd almost missed it, but looking back over the past year, the pattern was unmistakable. I tried reconnecting with her through memories of our early days, planning a weekend at the Eco Lodge in Oregon, where we'd spend our first anniversary. She agreed reluctantly, even showing a flash of her old enthusiasm when I mentioned the sustainable vineyard we'd discovered nearby. "That would be nice," she'd said, and for a moment, I saw the old Paige. But she canceled 2 days before our planned departure. "Jared needs my help with the Singapore investors," she explained, not meeting my eyes as she packed an overnight bag. "Dad says it's crucial for the Asian expansion." "Since when does marketing work directly with investors?" I asked, leaning against the bedroom door frame. "And who's Jared? You've mentioned him 3 times this week." "Jared Vance, Dad's new director of international development." Her tone was casual, but her cheeks flushed slightly. "He values my input on the cultural messaging." That weekend, while Paige was supposedly working, I decided to tackle our overgrown garden. Physical labor had always helped me think. As I dug near the decorative pond we'd installed together, my shovel hit something hard. A waterproof case containing old company documents with Raymond's signature alongside another name that made my blood run cold. Cruise Enterprises. My heart stopped. Cruise Enterprises was my father's failed environmental technology company, the one that went bankrupt when I was a teenager, destroying my family in the process. The documents detailed a hostile takeover, with Raymond using insider information and planted stories to destroy my father's reputation and company. I finally understood. Raymond hadn't hired me for my innovations or my talent. He'd hired me because of who I was, to complete his victory over my father by controlling his son, perhaps even to monitor whether I knew anything about his corporate espionage. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Even my marriage might have been part of his plan all along. The documents I found buried in my garden haunted me for days. I couldn't confront Paige directly. Not yet. I needed more information about the connection between Raymond and my father. Working late one night at the office, I combed through public records and found that Raymond's meteoric rise in the industry coincided exactly with my father's downfall 12 years ago. One evening, my phone vibrated with a text from Paige. "Working late with Dad and Jared. Don't wait up." It was the 3rd time that week. Something about the timing felt off, so I decided to follow my instincts. I drove to Green Vista headquarters, expecting to find the executive floor lit up with a late meeting. Instead, the building was mostly dark. Paige's car wasn't in the parking garage, but Raymond's Tesla was still there. I used my security badge to enter, telling the night guard I'd forgotten some files. The executive floor was silent, except for voices coming from Raymond's office. I approached quietly, the plush carpet muffling my footsteps. Through the partially open door, I could see Raymond and Jared hunched over documents. "Otis is getting suspicious," Jared said, his voice tense. "He's backing up everything now, installing his own security." Raymond scoffed. "It doesn't matter. Once the Singapore deal closes, we won't need him. Besides, he still has no idea about his father's research." "What if Paige slips up?" Jared asked. She's spending more time with me than her husband, but she's starting to ask questions. My blood ran cold at Raymond's laugh. My daughter knows her role. She's been playing it since day one. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Paige hadn't simply drifted away. She'd been actively involved in their scheme from the beginning. Our entire relationship was built on lies. I backed away silently, my mind racing. Instead of confronting them, I stopped at my office and downloaded everything I could access about the Singapore project, the cornerstone of Raymond's expansion plans. Then I retrieved the backup drives I'd hidden in my desk vent and slipped out of the building. On my way home, I made a detour to a secure storage facility I'd rented weeks ago when things first started feeling wrong. There I stored copies of everything, the documents about my father, my project backups, and the Singapore files. When I finally arrived home, our house was dark. I found a text from Paige, staying at Dad's tonight. Early meeting tomorrow. I pulled up our home security app and checked the footage from earlier that day. There she was, packing an overnight bag, with Jared waiting in a car outside her house. My wife wasn't at her father's. She was with the man who was systematically destroying my career. After discovering Paige's betrayal, I knew I needed to play the long game. The next morning, I arrived at work early, acting as if nothing had changed. When Paige called to explain her absence, I feigned understanding. Your dad's expansion is important, I said, swallowing my anger. I get it. You're the best, she replied, the relief in her voice confirming my suspicions. I'll make it up to you this weekend. I spent the next week carefully documenting everything while appearing to be clueless. During the day, I pretended to work on assigned projects. At night, I quietly reached out to industry contacts, focusing on competitors who might be interested in what I knew about Green Vista's operations and Raymond's questionable business practices. The most promising response came from Ecosphere International, Green Vista's main rival. Their CEO, Victoria Chambers, replied personally to my discreet inquiry. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Cruz, she wrote. I followed your work since the Denver restoration project. I'd welcome a confidential discussion about your future. Meanwhile, I discovered that the Singapore project, Raymond's crown jewel, was built on technology suspiciously similar to my father's original patents. Raymond hadn't just destroyed my father's company. He'd stolen his innovations and was now positioning himself to profit enormously from them. I was documenting this connection late one evening when I received an unexpected visitor. Lisa Morgan, Raymond's longtime executive assistant, knocked quietly on my office door. I don't have much time, she said, glancing nervously down the hallway. But you should know, they're accelerating the timeline. Your performance review has been moved up to next week. Why are you telling me this? I asked, surprised by her sudden allegiance. Her eyes hardened. I worked for your father before Raymond. What happened to him wasn't right. History shouldn't repeat itself. After she left, I made my decision. I had 6 days to execute my counter-strategy. I began by securing my most valuable personal research, innovations Raymond didn't even know about. Then I contacted Victoria Chambers to arrange an immediate meeting. That night, I stayed late organizing my evidence. Around midnight, I heard footsteps approaching my office. I quickly closed my files and opened a harmless project as Jared appeared in my doorway. Working late again, Cruz, he asked, feigning camaraderie. Don't burn yourself out before your review. I smiled blandly, just trying to impress the boss. Good luck with that, he smirked, unaware that I'd already set in motion plans that would blindside them all. Tuesday morning arrived with an ominous email from HR. Please join Mr. Williams and the executive team in the boardroom at 10 a.m. for your quarterly performance review. I knew what was coming. Still, I dressed impeccably in my best suit and entered the boardroom with confident strides. Raymond sat at the head of the table, flanked by Jared and the HR director. A corporate lawyer I'd never seen before sat in the corner, manila folder in hand. Otis, thank you for joining us. Raymond began with practice formality. I'm afraid this isn't a standard review. I gathered that from the lawyer. I replied calmly, maintaining eye contact. Raymond's smile tightened. We've documented several instances of underperformance and protocol violations. Regrettably, Green Vista will be terminating your employment effective immediately. The HR director slid a document across the polished table. Your severance package, contingent upon signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement. I glanced at the paper without touching it. And if I don't sign? The lawyer spoke up. Then you forfeit all benefits and open yourself to potential litigation regarding proprietary information. I see. I nodded slowly. And what proprietary information would that be? The urban cooling system your son-in-law sabotaged? Or perhaps the Singapore project that uses my father's stolen technology? Raymond's face darkened. Be very careful with your accusations, Otis. I stood, straightening my jacket. I haven't even begun to make accusations, Raymond. But rest assured, when I do, they'll be backed by considerable evidence. You're bluffing, Jared sneered. I smiled. Am I? Ask your IT department who accessed the secure servers at 2 a.m. the night before my presentation. Or shall we discuss why the Singapore plans contain mathematical models identical to those in my father's patents? Raymond abruptly stood. This meeting is over. Security will escort you to clean out your office. As the security guard watched me pack my personal items, my phone buzzed with a text from Paige. Dad told me what happened. We need to talk. Coming home now. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove straight to the bank to access my safe deposit box, where I'd stored the original documents about my father's company. Then I headed to meet Victoria Chambers from Ecosphere, Raymond's biggest competitor. When I finally returned home hours later, Paige was waiting. Her eyes were red, her expression a perfect mask of concern. Otis, I'm so sorry, she began, moving to embrace me. Dad wouldn't tell me why. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Let's not do this, Paige. I know everything. Her expression faltered. What are you talking about? I know about you and Jared. I know your father destroyed my father's company, and that our marriage was part of his plan. I kept my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. She dropped the act instantly, her eyes hardening. You don't understand the bigger picture. Actually, I do. That's what terrifies you. I walked past her to the bedroom and began packing a suitcase. Paige followed, her voice shifting from concern to calculation. Where do you think you're going? This house belongs to the company. With your termination, you have to vacate immediately. I turned to face her. How convenient. She smiled coldly. Dad always plans for contingencies. Time for a fresh start, Otis. Without another word, I finished packing, gathered my research materials, and walked out the door of the life I believed was real. The next 3 weeks tested every ounce of my resilience. I moved into a modest extended-stay hotel while searching for an apartment. Green Vista's influence in the industry was extensive. Suddenly, companies that had previously shown interest in my work wouldn't return my calls. My former colleague Marcus reached out with a warning. Raymond's telling everyone you had a breakdown and stole company secrets. Be careful. I maintained my focus, meeting with Victoria Chambers multiple times to detail Raymond's stolen technology. She was intrigued but cautious. These allegations are serious, she said during our third meeting. If we move forward, Williams will unleash his legal team. I understand the risk, I replied, but I also have the original proof. Meanwhile, Paige launched a different kind of attack. She began calling relentlessly, leaving voicemails alternating between tearful pleas and veiled threats. When I didn't respond, she escalated. One evening, I returned to find a brochure for a homeless shelter tucked under my hotel room door with a note in Paige's handwriting, where you'll end up after Raymond finishes with you. The intimidation tactics only strengthened my resolve. I spent days meticulously organizing my evidence and refining the sustainable urban systems I'd kept separate from Green Vista's reach. Innovations that went beyond anything Raymond had seen. The turning point came unexpectedly. My neighbor at the hotel, an elderly man named Frank, recognized me from a conference presentation years ago. He happened to be a retired patent attorney. Your cooling system model was revolutionary, he commented as we shared coffee in the lobby. Whatever happened with that? I explained my situation in careful terms. Frank listened intently, then offered a suggestion that changed everything. You need to file preliminary patents immediately on anything they haven't seen. Then approach Ecosphere with exclusive licensing rights, not just information about Williams. Following his advice, I spent my dwindling savings on patent applications. Then I contacted Victoria again with a transformed proposal. Not just evidence of Raymond's wrongdoing, but exclusive rights to my most innovative work. She invited me to present to her entire executive team the following week. My preparation was exhaustive, leaving nothing to chance. The morning of the presentation, I received a surprising text from Lisa, Raymond's assistant. Singapore deal falling apart. Raymond desperate. Jared blaming you. Paige being questioned by investors. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. The house of cards was beginning to collapse, and I hadn't even made my move yet. As I gathered my materials for the Ecosphere meeting, my phone exploded with notifications. 15 missed calls from Paige, 12 from Raymond, and several from Jared. I silenced my phone and straightened my tie. It was time to rise from the ashes. My presentation to Ecosphere's executive board exceeded all expectations. Victoria's team leaned forward as I demonstrated not just the flaws in Raymond's stolen technology, but the revolutionary improvements in my independent work. This urban microclimate system could transform how cities function during climate crises, Victoria stated, studying the projections. And you have the patents pending? Filed last week. I confirmed. The integration with existing infrastructure is what makes it truly innovative. By the meeting's end, we had outlined terms for an exclusive partnership. I would head Ecosphere's new sustainable urban division with complete creative control and proper credit for my innovations. The legal team would also pursue action against Green Vista for patent infringement. 3 days later, as I signed the final contracts in Victoria's office, breaking news flashed across the financial networks. Green Vista Technologies shares plummet amid failed Singapore project and investor lawsuits. Victoria smiled. Couldn't have timed it better if we tried. I didn't respond to the dozens of increasingly desperate calls from Raymond and Paige that week. Instead, I focused on building my new team and refining the innovations that would soon transform urban planning worldwide. The Vindication came a month later when the military-backed Singapore Urban Redevelopment Authority publicly canceled their contract with Green Vista and approached Ecosphere instead. My name was prominently featured in their press release as the lead innovator they wanted to work with. That evening, as I worked late in my new corner office with its view of the Seattle skyline, my assistant notified me of visitors. "Mr. Williams and Mrs. Cruz are insisting on seeing you," she said hesitantly. "Security is asking how to proceed." I considered for a moment. "Send them up." Raymond looked haggard, his usual polished appearance frayed at the edges. Paige stood beside him, her confident posture replaced by nervous energy. "Otis," Raymond began, his tone uncharacteristically humble. "We need to talk about reconciliation." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm listening." "The Singapore deal was everything," he continued. "Without it, we're facing bankruptcy. But with your innovations—" "My innovations are exclusively contracted to Ecosphere," I interrupted calmly. "And the patents are in my name alone. We're family." Paige interjected desperately. "That has to count for something." I smiled without warmth. "Family? Is that what we were when you packed my bags and handed me a homeless shelter brochure?" They left without the partnership they desperately needed. I hadn't raised my voice once. I didn't need to. 1 year after my unceremonious termination from Green Vista, I stood on stage at the International Sustainable Development Conference, accepting the Global Innovation Award for Ecosphere's revolutionary urban cooling system, now being implemented in 12 major cities worldwide. The success was sweeter knowing it came from my work, properly credited and ethically deployed. Victoria had proven to be not just a strategic partner, but a genuine ally who valued innovation over exploitation. As I scanned the audience during my acceptance speech, I noticed a familiar face in the back row. Lisa Morgan, Raymond's former assistant, now working for a climate nonprofit. She gave me a subtle nod of approval. Green Vista's collapse had been swift and complete. After the Singapore debacle, investors fled, patents were challenged, and eventually, the company was sold off in pieces. Raymond retired in disgrace, his reputation in tatters. Jared, predictably, abandoned ship early, taking a position with a competitor that quickly fired him when they discovered his role in the corporate espionage scandal. Paige continued calling for months, her messages evolving from threats to pleas for reconciliation and finally to requests for employment. I never responded. The divorce papers were handled entirely through attorneys. The most unexpected development came 6 months after Green Vista's collapse, when I received a letter from my father. He had been following the news from his small teaching position at a community college in Arizona. "I never thought I'd see justice," he wrote. You've restored not just your own reputation, but redeemed our family's work. I invited him to collaborate on Ecosphere's newest project, a sustainable desert community that incorporated his original vision with my innovations. Working together healed wounds I hadn't even realized were still open. Today, as I overlook the Seattle harbor from my new home, I reflect on how close I came to losing everything. The betrayal still stings sometimes, but it also freed me to build something authentic and lasting. Raymond thought he was destroying me. Instead, he forced me to become stronger than I ever knew possible. Sometimes the greatest achievements rise from the ashes of our most painful losses. I didn't just survive, I transformed, just like the cities my systems are now helping to heal and sustain.